Welcome back. All right, so it's Valentine's Day. I wanted to have some fun with the Panic Index today, and I thought, what's like a Valentine's themed jersey? So I went with the one for Supernatural because Sam and Dean, right? That was a romance show, right? Sam and Dean, Supernatural, there with the angel and all that stuff. Sure, why not? Anyways, so for today's Panic Index, you see the loving eyes at the top for the fan base to be very happy. The how you doing magnet, which I didn't know how I would ever get into a video, but here we are. For those old enough to remember Friends, great. For those not old enough to remember Friends, it probably wouldn't be your cup of tea. At any rate, there you go. The questioning emoji here, basically the I don't know where we're at. Grumpy's right here because Grumpy's my favorite of the seven dwarves, so he's on the board. Heartbroken here for fan bases that would qualify normally as the panicked. So the panicked, it's heartbroken instead, and the genie's lamp is down here for teams that are waiting for the draft lottery. So with these 6 levels in play, let's go ahead and see who ends up where. We're going to start with Vegas. Vegas right now kind of has to be next to the Hard Eyes, doesn't it? So this is a team that won the Stanley Cup last year. Looks quite good right now, even though they've been dealing with the injuries they have. So, yeah, for Vegas, I don't see any reason not to put them at the top right now. Playing quite well, and, I mean, yeah, they had the loss against Minnesota the other night, but still, they've been playing quite well going into that game. I think that was more of desperation from Minnesota. Nashville's up next. Nashville, they've been losing more than they've been winning lately. I don't know that I would necessarily. I mean, is it in the angry? Is it in the grumpy territory right now? Well, yeah, I'll put it under grumpy right now because it does feel like Nashville's been in the driver's seat about being in a playoff spot for a while, and now they're kind of not. So I'll go ahead and put Nashville next to grumpy if that works for people, and if it doesn't, you guys can let me know in the web zone underneath why it doesn't work for you. Minnesota, I'm going to put Minnesota in the middle. Minnesota, overall, their record, not great, but they've been playing well lately. And this is a team that if they keep playing well, like if they get a win tonight over Arizona, which is a winnable game, they're getting potentially that much closer to a playoff spot, right? And their GM was clear that he believed they could still make a run for the playoffs. So if you're a Minnesota fan, do you believe, do you not? I'm going to put it right in the middle. Florida. Tough not to have Florida at the top of the board, isn't it? Things have been going well for the Panthers recently. We'll see if that continues tonight, where they're against Pittsburgh. But yeah, things going pretty darn well. For the Florida Panthers, a team that went all the way to the Stanley Cup final last year, and they look like a team that may very well be able to, at the very least, go back to the Stanley Cup final again this year. That is a rarity. It is rare for a team to lose in a Stanley Cup final and then go back to the final the following year. Almost as rare as it is for a team to win the Stanley Cup and then go back to the final the following year. Tampa Bay, of course, being the exception of that. Tampa Bay being in the final 3 years in a row. Buffalo. It is tough for me not to have Buffalo at the bottom. I'm going to put them next to the genie in the lamp because you're kind of waiting for the draft lottery. But man, that 7-0 win last night. Be nice to see that go somewhere. But I've seen it too many times this year with Buffalo, so I'm not going to say it. But, yeah, so I'll put them next to the genie in the lamp. Columbus, they kind of end up in the same spot. For the Columbus Blue Jackets last night, another game where, and again, every game for Columbus that you watch, you can tell there's little things in their game that are encouraging. There's certain moments in every single game where you go, you know what? They could do that a little more often, whether it's the offense, the defense, getting big saves. They could go somewhere, but they don't win enough games. And so we'll see how that gets fixed either at the deadline, in the offseason, or both. I would think the fixing starts once we reach the trade deadline. Philadelphia. I'm not going to put Philadelphia up at the very top, but hey, the city of brotherly love. How you doing? There you go. So I'm going to put them next to the Joey Tribbiani magnet, which doesn't have Joey's face on it, which I think is kind of sad. In the Friends stickers that I got, because of course I got Friends stickers, don't you? I have Doctor Who ones too. I can't wait to incorporate those. But yeah, there wasn't one with Joey, with him saying how you doing with the smile on his face. I'm like, how do you not? But there you go. City of brotherly love, Philadelphia, things are going pretty well. St. Louis, I know they lost last night, but the record's been pretty good lately. I'm going to put St. Louis here as well. But if St. Louis starts losing games, they're going to end up down in this category here. Because again, The West, it feels like it's still kind of wide open. If St. Louis falls off a little bit, Nashville gets a little better, we'll see how muddy the waters get. But for St. Louis, I don't see any reason not to have them there. For the Islanders, see, the thing is, the Islanders, they did switch coaches. I think people are happy with the fact they've switched coaches, but they can't be happy with the overall results. So now you've fixed the coaching problem, if you believe the coaching was part of the problem. But the players on the ice, you're still dealing with a lot of the same issues. And I think Patrick was seeing, and he probably knew this anyways, but it's not going to be a quick fix for the New York Islanders. And then you get into the Lou discussion. So I'm going to put the Islanders here. They only get the 1 point last night. They only had the 1 goal last night as well. Definitely some concern, I would think, for the New York Islanders. The LA Kings, it is tough not to have LA down with total panic at this point. A 7-0 loss against Buffalo? Really? Like, that shouldn't happen if you're a team that's really, fighting for that playoff spot. You shouldn't be having games like that. So for me, the LA Kings, a team that I have under panic, I'm going to grab a little sip of this before I have a coughing fit. So the LA Kings, yeah, the first one next to the panic, which I know it's a heartbreak, but it's Valentine's Day, so why can't I do heartbreak instead of panic? Colorado, so they get the big win last night. You know what? I'm going to put them next to how you doing. I'm not going to put them in the very top row. I don't think there's any concern with Colorado. I think that would be overstating it. They do need some pieces of the deadline. I think they need another forward. Johansson's playing time's been getting dropped back because he's not scoring the way they want him to. I think they need another forward, whether that's center or winger. I do think they'll probably be looking for a little bit of depth in net. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Colorado, generally, I think no reason to have them any lower than how you doing. Ottawa. Is Ottawa considered panic at this point or not? I mean, I'm going to put them right here. Even though Ottawa's been playing really well. They've won 7 out of their last 11. They're 7-2-2 in their last 11 games, I do believe. Because I think they were 6-2-2 going into their game last night in their last 10. But for Ottawa, I think we're still in a region where they're so far out of the playoffs. Yeah, they're waiting for the draft lottery, which feels like it's a yearly thing for the Ottawa Senators. I didn't mind using the old logo, which is the new logo, and they've gone back to the old logo. But I didn't mind using that logo because I thought, it's been the same for years, so I can use that one. Calgary. Calgary's a tough read. I'm going to put them here. They trade Lindholm. There's discussions about them potentially trading Markstrom, of course, whether or not Hannafin might go. Are they going to try to stay in the hunt? Are they not? Is this a team that's looking at this year as being kind of a write-off? I mean, if you're going to trade out Markstrom, and I've made the argument for trading Markstrom. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing, but it does kind of tell people this isn't the year, and Calgary doesn't see themselves as contending right now. So I'm going to put them next to the confused emoji, and you guys can let me know your thought. Basically, that symbolizes the line I would normally have on a panic index. Pittsburgh. I'm going to put them below. I'm going to put them right here. I do feel like with their recent record, I think they're 3-4-3 in their last 10. Not great. Definitely right now, I would say probably a little bit out of the playoff chase. I got to adjust the hat, make sure it doesn't look silly and all that. But yeah, this is the hat to let people know I'm serious. Anyways, yeah, Pittsburgh, I'm going to put them next to Grumpy there. So there's going to be Disney theming from now on when it comes just to things. So I apologize, but yeah, Pittsburgh right there. Toronto. Oh, man, Toronto, it depends on the day, doesn't it? I mean, they've won 3 of their last 4, but it doesn't feel like it. And I don't feel like having them up here makes much sense. So I'm going to put them on the line as well with the maybe happy, maybe sad face. We haven't decided yet, the confused face. So for people who might be using their phones and saying, I have a hard time seeing that, that's the face right there. There you go. All right. So, yeah, Toronto I'm going to put right there because are they a contending team? Is this a team that could move into top 3? Is this a team that's going to end up being a wild card? Is this a team that's going to excel? Or are they going to fall back? And so, yeah, I think there's some questions out there with Toronto. Seattle, not panicked. I'm going to put them right down here. I think for Seattle, even though they get that win last night, I think that the ship has sailed on this season, and I think most will likely be okay with that. I don't think there's any reason for panic. Seattle's only in their 3rd year. And not everybody's Vegas. So it would make some sense for Seattle this offseason to add some players, pick up maybe a really high draft pick, and then go into next year with the idea of getting back into the hunt for the playoffs in year 4. And there's enough good pieces in Seattle that they can make that work. Montreal's in that same spot. Montreal, we know, is in a rebuild. The Monahan trade signaled that there's no going back on that, which is good. I think that's great for them. I think the Montreal Canadiens are doing a good job of building. I think they've got already really, really solid depth on the blue line for the future. And yes, that includes Lane Hudson. And they have a lot of intriguing prospects outside of that. Plus, you've got the potential for drafting, I don't know, maybe a Celebrini in the offseason. I think this year they draft a forward. There was all the discussion about Reinbacher and whether or not they should have drafted him. This year I figure it'll probably be a forward. Dallas, tough not to have Dallas at the top. That win over Carolina last night was fun. That was a really good game. That was well played by Dallas. Mentioned this in the review last night. I'll mention it again here. The shots really heavily favored Carolina, but it didn't feel like they controlled the game as much. And it feels like a lot of those chances weren't necessarily of the most dangerous variety. But yeah, I think Dallas has played quite well. Now they're playing well against the really good teams, which even their broadcast crew mentioned that of top 10 teams in the league, going into last night, they were 5-6-3 in games against teams that are in the top 10. So they have definitely had a hard time playing against the better teams. But last night, they played well, and Ottinger was fantastic as well. Winnipeg. Winnipeg I'm going to put under how you doing. Lately, it's been a little more, maybe a concerned how you doing, like how you doing? How are things going? But either way, I don't think there's any reason to necessarily put them into panic. There may be some Jets fans who feel that way. I think that'd be a bit premature. They're not in any danger of falling out of the top 3 in that division right now. I don't think that's going to happen, and so it's hard for me to put Winnipeg any lower than I have on the board. The one question becomes, what do you add at the deadline? Now that you've got Monahan, is that it? Are they going to need to add something else? Tonight's game against the Sharks, that should be one they'd win. I would say at least 4-1. If they end up struggling to score goals again tonight, I think that puts pressure on Chevy to make another move. Detroit had a rough night last night, huh? But I'm not going to move them too far off of the happiness. I'm going to put them under how you doing too. Last night's game was ugly. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. But in reality, for the Detroit Red Wings, these nights are going to happen, and it's how you bounce back from it. I have no doubt Detroit can bounce back from it. This is the same team that came from behind to beat the Vancouver Canucks. And if not for some bounces last night, and the fact McDavid was playing completely out of his mind, they might have had the comeback last night too. They did have that game tied at 3 when they had been down 3-1. Arizona, I can't put it under grumpy. I can't put it under panicked either. I'm going to put it here next to the waiting for the draft lottery. So we're up to 6 teams waiting for the draft lottery. And this, it feels like, is now a case every year. And it feels like, whether it is or it isn't, that this has become more of a thing where there's teams that are just out of the hunt relatively early in the season. So, these teams in this area here should be the ones that are selling at the deadline. And Arizona has got there through their 2-6-2 record over their last 10. Carolina, last night Carolina had a bit of a struggle, but Carolina's been playing well enough lately. I can't have them lower than the top row, really. Carolina's been amongst the best teams in the league, and even in games they lose, like the one against Dallas, the one against Vancouver, not too far back, they still look good. It's not like they look bad. So, although again, like I said, I think Dallas mildly outplayed them last night, but they still look good. And Carolina's always dangerous. So, yeah, I kind of have to have them in the top row, don't I? For the Oilers, it kind of has to be top row as well. Now, they've only won 2 of their last 4, but the reality is they've won, is it 18 of their last 21? 18 out of 20? It's a lot. And so when you're winning games like this, and that win against Detroit, I guess people can write that win off because people can write off any win. But I think the Oilers showed what they could do last night. Bouncing back from a 4-0 loss with an 8-4 victory. Well done. So, yeah, the Oilers top row. For Washington, are they waiting for the draft lottery, or do I want to put them under panicked? It feels like they're waiting for the draft lottery. So you guys can let me know your thoughts on this one. The Capitals have lost enough games lately that it does feel like they're kind of out of the hunt. I know that they're close with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's seen as being closer, so that's the reason why I have Washington here, Pittsburgh here. Again, I know they're not that far apart in points, but it does feel like for the Caps, there's more reason to think, all right, well, they're probably out of it than there necessarily is with Pittsburgh. Tampa Bay. I mean, Tampa Bay has played well, but they're without Sergachev now. They did win in a shootout last night against Boston. It's tough to argue Tampa Bay down because they've been 8-3 in their last 11 games. So for Tampa Bay, there's injury concerns, I would think, with this team. There may still be some concern about where's the Stamkos extension. Can we get a Stamkos extension now? But yeah, I don't see any reason to have Tampa Bay any lower than how you doing. So again, which can be changed to how are you doing? How are things? San Jose's right here. San Jose kind of has to be next to the genie there in that we don't know what they're going to get yet at the draft lottery scenario that it could end up being Chicago because Chicago right now is the worst team in the league points wise. So by that standard, they could win the draft lottery, and then everybody would say, "Well, that makes sense. That's fair." Yep, that's how that's going to go. New Jersey, I'm going to put squarely into the confused. New Jersey winning back-to-back games over, back-to-back days. That is unusual this season. I think that's only the second time New Jersey's won the second half of a back-to-back. And having won the first half of that back-to-back as well, looks like New Jersey's getting things together. Now, of course, their goaltending's been a question mark. Nico Daws was quite good last night, so is it still a question mark? We'll see what they do and how those questions get answered. But yeah, things are going all right for New Jersey. They're not quite above that playoff line. They're not comfortable towards playoffs. But are they going to trend towards playoffs? We'll see, right? And then this is where, for a team like Detroit, they have to be careful because New Jersey may very well be able to get hot in that last stretch of 30 games we're going to go through here. Vancouver. It is so odd to me to see Vancouver where they are in the standings. And not only that, but when I look at the standings last night and I go Vancouver, Boston, Dallas. Before I did the review last night, I had to go and show my wife. I had to say, look at this. Vancouver's number 1 in the league, Boston's number 2, and Dallas is number 3. My favorite teams are Vancouver, Boston, Dallas. I don't know what this world is that we're living in, but it's bizarre. And so Vancouver's at the top, Dallas is at the top. Now we've got to Chicago. Chicago's going right here next to San Jose. So Chicago, as I said, in that draft lottery category, it's got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams. I feel like at this point, I'm not done going through them yet. Yeah, we're not done with teams that are potentially going to be in that category, but there's a lot, including Anaheim. So that's 10, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll go out on a limb and say one of these 10 teams is going to win a lottery pick. So, I know, crazy, right? Wow, way to go out on a limb there. But, I think that, and notice I said a lottery pick, not necessarily first overall. That way, if there's a team on the board that gets first overall, I don't necessarily have to be wrong. But odds are we're going to see one of these teams picking early. I think Anaheim and Chicago, both teams with some prospects, but definitely could use some more. Chicago needs more prospects than Anaheim does. Anaheim's been in the rebuild a little bit longer, though. Boston. I don't see any reason not to have Boston at the top. There's been a lot of injuries. There have been some iffy games here and there, sure, but the game against the Caps, the game against the Flames, but still, number 2 in the NHL. I don't have any reason not to have them in the top row here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then Rangers. So do Rangers go at the top? Do Rangers go here? Because they're not going to go any lower than that, right? I'm going to put them right here. They've been playing better lately. Definitely been playing better lately. But were there still some concerns going to the All-Star break? Sure. So I'm going to keep them at that second level. And there you go. So the only team I have that I feel like is really truly in panic is LA. I will give honorable mentions to Buffalo. I would say gets an honorable mention for, some fans maybe being in some sort of a level of panic. And I could see Columbus as well. Just there's so much uncertainty around that team right now that even though they're nowhere near the playoff chase, there's obviously going to be some concerns about how do you fix this. So anyways, there you go. Panic Index for Valentine's Day, and I went as romantic as possible. Supernatural, because there always seemed to be some young lady that Dean or Sam were vexed by, and it always seemed to be one of the main storylines of that show. It only ran for 47 seasons. They're considering bringing it back because they may not have used up all the storylines yet. So that's more of an entertainment guy thing. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm glad I wore the hat that shows I mean business. I'll wear the Donald hat anytime I get the chance because it's really funny, and this was cheaper than the hats you get from Fanatics, which may fall apart. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. It's a baseball jersey reference, but thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event that you haven't so far, and hey, I will talk to you again soon.